Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Ghostly Stories, brought to you by Half Past Dead Paranormal Radio. I am your host, Roger Belt, and my co-host is Mr. James Clumperrin. Say hello, James.
Hello, James. Oh.
Hello. I am your host, Roger Belt. Yep, here we go. Got to jump over here real quick. Yeah, stop that. Okay.
Yeah, got some echo going here. Yeah.
Well, if you don't go over there and pause the player in the chat room, it does that. So if you have the chat room up, you got to pause that. Anyway, we have an interesting topic for tonight's story. I know a lot of people have heard of the black-eyed children, and not just children, adults, and everything else, but this story is about black-eyed children and an event which we're going to get into right about now. And I call this story the Midnight Caller. Well, that's actually the name that was on it. Unfortunately, the only name I have is No Sleep 2012. So we're going to give out kudos to No Sleep 2012, whoever you may be. This is a very interesting story, and I appreciate being able to air it tonight. It almost felt like a dream. I woke up to my dog Lucy barking. She was upright on the bed where my husband and I were sleeping with our 22-month-old daughter, staring at the door like an unknown stranger was out there rummaging around. I thought she was just freaking out over a house noise. We'd only had her for 3 months and she was still a puppy. It could have been anything: our roommate, a creak from the house settling, the awnings moving outside in the breeze. I wasn't too concerned initially. I decided the best bet would be to open the door and show her nothing was there. It sounds a bit silly, but it's what we do with our daughter when she gets scared, and I figured it should work with a puppy. I opened the door and she raced to the front door. She stood there snarling at the door. It was an angry, violent growl, one I had never heard her make before. I looked groggily at her and opened the baby gate, blocking the doorway, planning to open the door and show her everything was okay. The second my hand reached for the deadbolt, Lucy went wild. She started barking and jumped toward me. And when I touched the metal, she suddenly changed her temper. She whimpered, almost like she was afraid and backing down. As her mannerism changed, so did mine. I wasn't calm anymore. My heart was racing and sinking at the same time. I had been flooded with a mixture of fear and dread. I looked through the peephole. I can't explain why I looked, but I did. Outside were two kids. One was just a smidgen shorter than me and didn't look much younger. I'm 21 and she looked to be 16 or 17. She was slender and pale. Her hair was a light shade of honey blonde and she wore it long, about mid-back, with long, thin, blunt bangs in the front that covered most of her eyes. She wore jeans, a light wash that's popular right now, and a thin-looking olive-colored pullover style hoodie. She held the hand of a small girl who looked to be around 3 or 4, in the same style jeans and a button-down ivory cardigan. The smaller one looked at the floor shyly, but had the same shade of hair tied back in a ponytail. She held a stuffed toy under her free arm, and it was identical to one my daughter has, as was their style of dress. Had it not been for the feeling of overwhelming dread and fear, I probably would have asked these children in and given them some tea or hot chocolate to get them out of the bitter cold. Something about them seemed off. At this point, I hadn't made any noise. I hadn't shushed the dog or grumbled nothing. I hadn't turned on any lights. These kids had no indicators I was at the door. The older one spoke. She had a voice that was mature, confident, strong, and accentless. She held her head tilted downward, and I couldn't see her eyes. She said, "We have to use your phone." I stood frozen in fear. How did she know I was there? She raised her head to face me directly, and that was when I saw her eyes. There was a reason I couldn't see them through her bangs before. They were black or midnight blue or a dark purple. They were otherworldly. She said, "Our mother is worried." As someone who has always been interested in creepy stories, I knew what she was the second she looked at me through the door. I have never been one to believe in these things as a staunch atheist and skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. I had written off many a ghost story from friends and family members eager to tell their tale. I didn't believe it. Still, I couldn't rationalize my way out of this. I was standing with nothing but a thin wooden door between me and a black-eyed kid. There was no questioning what was right in front of me. I did not answer her. Slowly and silently, I backed away from the door. Lucy still cowering at my ankles. She kept talking. "Just let us in to use your phone." I took another step back, and with that step, the tone changed. At first, she seemed polite. When I took that second step back, she became commanding, almost hostile. "We're not going to hurt you. If we wanted to do that, we would have broken in. I'll ask again. May we come in and use your phone?" Lucy snarled at the door, and I inched backward. Through something inside me seemed to be slowly pulling me back toward the door. It wasn't a physical pulling so much as a subconscious need to go back and let them in. I got to my room, covered up the window, locked the door, and sat there in the dim light of the nightlight. I heard her call me back to the door once more, and then quiet. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I haven't slept right since. I know from reading about them that BEKs can't just come in without permission. I know they haven't hurt anyone, but I still fear I'll be the exception. When I told my husband, he said it was just a dream. He keeps telling me to forget it, but this lingering feeling of sadness, this dread when the house is silent at night, this fear of a knock at the door, this tells me otherwise. So here we have a woman, and it's around midnight. Somebody knocks on the door, the dog starts going nuts. You know, you got to ask yourself, what would you do if you had a knock at your door at midnight or later, and you look through the peephole and you see a black-eyed kid standing out there? I mean, first off, you're going to be like, "Oh shit, they're real." You know, second off, you're going to be like, "Oh crap, they're real." You know, you go start backing up, dog pedaling backwards, and of course now
the dog's there is, it's like the dog's seeing it too.
Yeah,
so and feeling it. That's just real right there.
Right, and I've got 3 of them, and I guarantee you they will go start craving mad. But the thing is, And we discussed this a little bit earlier. I've heard a lot of different stories and read bits and pieces about black-eyed kids before. Uh, what is it about? Do they have some kind of power that makes you want to let them in? You know what I mean? Because most people, it seems like when you read about anybody dealing with that, it's like they have this overwhelming sense of wanting to invite them in, you know?
Well, I think that's just basic human nature. You know, somebody in need, especially a kid,
Right.
People are going to say, oh yeah, come in. Yeah. The whole black-eyed kid part of it, I'm not really familiar with, but that would make it a little creepier for sure. Being that the dog was there, tells me that, you know, it's more than just a dream type of thing.
Right.
You know, because the dog's saying it too.
And also the dog acting like it did. Normally a puppy,
Yeah.
if they heard a kid at the door or something, they probably would be like, you know, all shaking and wagging and, you know, want the attention.
Pet me, yeah.
This one's growling and snarling and then acting like it's scared and backing off, you know. I mean, that tells you something too.
Yeah, and an older dog becomes protective and this and that, but a young dog, a little puppy, you know, they just like everybody.
Right.
So for a puppy to go, huh, wait a minute, and cower and this and that, what caused that?
If you hear a child's voice, and I mean, even a 16, 17-year-old has a young voice.
Oh, yeah.
You would think a puppy would be like, oh, there's somebody out there to pet on me. Open the door, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, no. They're like, you know, there's something at the door I don't like.
And animals' intuition is amazing. You know, they can tell right off if somebody is harmful or somebody is friendly. And for an animal to go to the harmful side and defensive side right away is pretty amazing.
Well,
that tells you something right there.
Yeah, that should tell you you don't need to open that door. You know.
Yeah.
I had a wolf Malamute dog one time.
Excuse me.
Never bothered anybody. But two people could pull up in my driveway and he would go freaking nuts. He did not like them whatsoever. It's like he could sense something about them, you know, that wasn't right.
And they have that sense. It's you know, I don't know what it is, but they know. I've had pets all my life, and there are people who will come to my door that I will think are totally innocent, and friends who I think are totally innocent, and those animals know that this person's going to, you know, there's something not good here. And turns out later in time that, yeah, the animal was right from the first instinct.
Yeah.
So that's interesting in itself.
Yeah, animals are like that. They have this. That's like also like, you know, I've heard the question asked, you know, can animals see spirits? Yes, I do believe they can. I believe they're more sensitive to it than people are.
I believe that too.
So now we have two kids here, and that's usually how you hear these stories. It's usually like, you know, a young boy and a young girl, or two young boys or two young girls. Anyway, it's always one bigger and one smaller, and it's always usually a pair. Just about everything except for the one I told you about with the woman coming out of the woods. Just about every other thing I've ever read on them is they've always been in a pair. You know, does that make it more? And usually one of them is pretty young, right? So it automatically makes you want to instinctively, you know, help the little one. You know, you're probably not as concerned about the older one, but you know, you see a little 3 or 4 year old child or 5 or whatever, you know, little kid, your heart wants to reach out to them, you know.
And this raises a question in my mind: is, you know, is the older one actually being the protector of the younger one?
I don't think so. I think it's a setup. That's what I was saying. You know, the older one has the little one with them to make it look more, we need help with us. Whereas if the older come to the door by themselves, you know, your first instinct would be, you know, well, hell, you're grown nearly. You know, what are you doing coming to the door begging like your mom was worried about you? Come on now, you know. But you bring somebody that age with a little 3 or 4 or 5 year old child with them, it's automatic like, oh, poor thing, you know. So
I guess I look at that in both sides. Yeah, the one could be overtaking the other, but I tend to look at the lighter side, the better side of that. Maybe the older one is there trying to help the younger one. Being the protector.
Since I don't know that much about them, you know, you could be right.
I have a couple other questions about the story, and it would be interesting to know. And I know you don't have this information, but it would be interesting exact location and date of when this happened, because then you could do some research.
Right.
Maybe something happened at that household earlier to where those spirits are there asking for help.
Well,
I want to use my phone, use your phone, this and that. You know, did something happen at that location at an earlier time where something tragic happened?
Well, that's the thing about it, though, is black-eyed kids don't present themselves like spirits. They present themselves like real children with black eyes. So could they be some kind of entity? I mean, who knows? We don't really know that much about them. And if it's true, like I was saying earlier, that, you know, they have demonic tendencies, then very well, yes, it could be like demonic, you know. And how do you know it? And this goes back to not knowing much about it. How do you know that these are not real live children that they have possessed and their eyes just go black because they have a demon in them?
Wow.
You know, the demon says, yeah, I want you to go to this door, you know, and you tell them, let me in to use the phone, whatever, you know, to get in the house. Then once inside, you know, they can do whatever it is they intend to do. So, yeah, I mean, it brings a lot of interesting questions up.
It sure does.
Where they come from and, you know, what they are. And as we were talking about earlier, I'd read something today about, you know, black-eyed children and UFOs. So, but now, I'm going to say this, and I'm laughing when I say this because it's so out there. Everything is involved with UFOs. Bigfoot even comes out of a UFO. So,
well, I'm just saying. That's unidentified. So, that's part of it.
Unidentified hairy object come out with UFO. No. But that's what I'm saying. You know, you hear of everything being involved with a UFO. Well, if you see Bigfoot, there was a UFO in the sky. So, you know, yeah, Bigfoot must have came from there. Somebody goes missing, let's just say, don't have a recollection of where they've been. Maybe because they had it, what's that called? Where they can't remember. Oh, darn it. You know what I'm talking about.
I don't remember.
The word they use for the term of loss of memory where you can't remember.
Amnesia.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody goes missing. That, you know, maybe they hit their head or something. They developed amnesia. You know, somewhere down the line, they get their memory back and they show back up. Well, alien must have abducted them because they've got all this missing time they can't account for. You know, I'm just saying. Now, do I believe alien abductions happen? Yes, I do. But do I believe every one of them where there's missing time? No, because it could happen that way. You know, that is a plausible answer that could say why they have a loss of time they can't account for.
As you were saying that, I kind of pointed at my head here, and I told you the story before we went on air.
Right.
I fell and smacked my head, and yeah, there was some time I could not account for, and
it abducted you.
No, I just hit my head.
Well, you know, you hit your head and you were out for you don't know how long, right? So
well, and actually, because I hit my head, I mean, I know exactly when that happened, but there was about a day and a half's worth of things that I don't remember.
That's because them aliens abducted you. You
You
don't remember that shiny spaceship and the examination table and all that.
That would have been a whole lot nicer than just hitting my head.
Really, folks. James had a accident that could have been fatal, and it bothers me the fact that he lives alone, and now I'm going to worry about him because he's there by himself. And if something like that were to happen and it would have been more fatal, you know, he may not be here with us tonight. So, you know, that does kind of bother me.
Thanks for your concern, but that's life, and we deal with it and keep moving on.
Yeah, I know, but that doesn't make it any less worrisome now because I'll be thinking about that. But anyway,
sorry.
Oh, now while you were on that spaceship, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, there were these little guys with squinty eyes and big heads, and
see, now the truth comes out. Okay.
No, I'm joking here.
Yeah, what we're trying to say is everything seems to be involved with UFOs, no matter what you're talking about. So why not black-eyed kids too, right?
Sure. Well, UFO. I mean, yeah, that's unidentified flying object. Now, whether it's flying or not, you know, it could be a UUO. An unidentified underwater object or whatever. If it's unidentified, that's the key word.
Okay, and we don't know where they come from. So could they come from a UFO? Yeah. Could they be demonic? Yeah. I mean,
possible. We don't know. That's the big thing.
Did you ever read the story about the two green kids?
No, that's a new one to me.
Two kids that showed up and came across the field into a village, and their skin was green tinted. Nobody knows where they came from. It was a little boy and a little girl. The little boy wound up dying. The little girl lived, and her skin tone finally lightened up to where it didn't have the green tint anymore, and she learned to speak English and all this and everything. That's the story. But nobody knew where they came from. And she claims that they came from some place where everything was green tinted like that. You know, everything around them, the land, everything.
From the valley, the jolly green.
Asked that she remembered her and her brother were in the field watching the cattle or something, and the next thing they know, they showed up there. Now that sounds kind of like one of those dimensional type crossover things. So
could be.
Can we not say that these black-eyed children come from another dimension also? So see, there's another answer. If there was more knowledge on them, you know, we could probably maybe pinpoint something. But since there's not, you know, there's all these plausible explanations from where they could have come from.
It's really easy to come up with an explanation for this or this or this, you know, and say, oh, this is why it happened, you know, and but you really don't know unless you're actually there at the time to investigate it when it happens. I mean, it's like everything else throughout history. There, you know, I mean, I don't want to get into religion, but you know, you look at the Bible or whatever. You know, there are a lot of explanations for things that happened that were the explanation for the time of their knowledge. Is it real? Did it really happen? Well, yeah, it probably really happened. Why did it really happen? We don't know. And that's the whole thing that makes it interesting to talk about and hope to be able to investigate and find out, you know, why did this happen? How did it really happen?
Memorex, yeah. That's the thing that makes the black-eyed kid thing so interesting, is we don't really know anything about them. Just that they, you know, they're seen and they try to enter your car, your house, or whatever, you know, with some story about they're lost or they're, you know, they need a ride home and their mother's worried about them and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like a stuck record thing.
With the black-eyed kids thing, excuse me for interrupting, with the black-eyed kids thing, for example, I believe that the people actually saw this and went through this, you know, and the kids were there. And in that type of situation, I have to, you know, strongly look at the paranormal side of that. These are spirits of kids who went through a tragic situation and they're looking to call home. They have not left. They have not crossed over. You know, they want to call mom and dad. They want some help. I can actually believe that.
See that, like I said, that's another plausibility. But as I said, in every case where they're seen, you know, how many spirits can, you know, will come up looking like a live kid and knock on your door? How many spirits will walk up to your car door and stand there and talk to you and say, you know, I need to get in your car, or I need you to, you know, to help me with do something or whatever. And it's never, in any of these cases, it's never, you know, I'm stuck here and I need to cross over or anything like that. Anything that a spirit might be in tune to do.
I don't think they know they need to cross over. I think they're just looking for help. They don't even know they're in the middle. They haven't crossed over yet.
Okay, now, again, in every case except for that one that I told you about, they're always in pairs, and there's always one little one and one big one, you know. So if they were spirits that were lost and looking for their way, you know, looking for help, why do they always show up as a pair, one small, one big?
Interesting question. I really haven't looked into that at all to even know the amount of records of that situation.
Well,
But
like I said, I've read lots of little things about, you know, people seeing the black-eyed kids, and it's always usually a pair of them. And there's usually always one that's a little younger than the other, or a lot younger than the other in most cases. But there was one story that I read, or actually it was a video that I watched, where a guy was, he went to his job or something. He had something about it, he had to drop off something, but he went and he was in like one of those underground parking area deals. And
okay.
he goes in there and he's, you know, going to take care of his business, and these two boys approach him, and they got the black eyes, of course, and they're telling him something about they need to get in to see a movie, but they don't have the money. Can he, you know, get them into the movies? Basically what they wanted him to do was open his car door, which gives them, I guess, basically permission to enter his vehicle. And they did the same thing as the girl did in the story, except for, you know, where she said, "We're not going to hurt you." The older boy tells him, "Why won't you open the door? We don't have a gun." So it's basically like, you know, and he even, his voice even changed to a more aggressive tone when he said that, like the girl did when she said, "We're not going to hurt you." It's like, you know, they try the nice, polite approach first, and if you don't let them in, then they start getting aggressive.
So with that in mind, then, what is your thought that their goal was? You know, what did they want to do?
I would lean more to thinking that it was more in a demonic type nature, because I could see the aggression coming from a demonic being. You know, they always, you know, they try to come up like helpless kids and everything, and then
so once they got into the house, you know, if they got into the house, what was their goal?
I don't think I've ever read a story where anybody actually let them in. So I really don't know what their purpose was once they got in. But you know what it reminds me of when you think about this? You remember all the old vampire movies?
Mm-hmm.
The vampire couldn't come in the house unless they were invited.
Well, not by all the movies, but they always found a way in. But
but in a lot of those movies and everything, you know, they would be like outside the window or something, and they couldn't just come in. They would do something to try to get you to invite them in, because they had to have permission, basically. And this seems to be the same situation with the black-eyed kids. They can't just come into your car or your house or whatever. You have to invite them. You know, that alone is creepy when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, okay, I can get that part of it. In that, yes, if you invite demons into your life,
right,
they are there.
Now,
if you don't accept a demon, then that demon stays away. And that's just human psychology too, with anything else. You can either reject bad things, or you can invite them in and take them in, and it becomes part of your life. So,
you know, and you could even throw in the dimensional factor here. If they came like from a parallel dimension or something like that. Where they come from.
The whole parallel dimension thing is really, really interesting to me.
Could it be possible that they had to have permission when they come into this dimension? They have to get permission before they can enter a place or a vehicle, or.
And that's what I don't understand is why would they need permission if they're there? They're out in front of your door.
I don't know, but that's always the case, and everyone you read about is, you know, they can't come in unless they're invited. So
interesting.
You know, what's up with that? Why do they have to do that? And that's what reminded me of the old vampire movies where they would have to invite them in before they could come in, you know, and suck their blood. Sure. So if they invite them in, they're going to go in there and suck their blood. Who knows? Possibly.
Yeah, the whole invitation part really intrigues me.
Well, you got to wonder about that. Why? Why do they have to have permission?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, they didn't have permission to come up to your doorstep in the first place.
So they don't, basically, from this, they don't have to have permission to come on your property, but they have to have permission to enter through your doorway. So
see, that part I don't understand at all.
Well, maybe because when you walk onto the grounds, there's nothing to hold you back there, right? But if you come up to a wall with a door, you can't enter that room without you get permission. So,
well, see, you know, this goes kind of back to earlier conversations we've had in earlier shows with, for example, objects moving in the yard.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I was in North Carolina, I mean, we had things in the front yard and the whole backyard was fenced in. And we had the dog that was in the backyard area. Well, nobody asked permission to move the stuff from the front yard to the backyard.
Well, now you're talking,
and that's kind of a closed-in area.
Yeah, but you're talking about this being more like a spirit activity. Okay, we're not talking about spirits here. We're talking about possible possessed actual children, or children from a parallel dimension, or children from a UFO, or children from, you know what I'm saying. But you know, we're talking about.
Oh, there are tons of possibilities there. You're right.
So,
and we don't know.
But I agree with you. The whole getting permission thing, it kind of makes me wonder, why do they have to do that? Why can't they just, if you open the door, let's say, if they're standing outside your door and you open your door, but you're standing in the door, but you don't say come in, do they have to stand out there and just look at you?
Why?
You know, they just come on.
Yeah. If they have the ability to be there, why do you have to let them in? If they want in, they'll come in, I think.
Well, that's what the girl said. Remember, if we wanted to hurt you, we could have just broke in. But no, they couldn't, because they have to have permission.
That's interesting.
So she
that puts a whole different thought thing going, you know.
telling her that to get her to open the door. Well, if we were going to hurt you, we could have just broke in. Well, that makes you think automatically, well, yeah, she's right. You know, if they wanted to hurt somebody, they could have just broke in and done it. So maybe they're harmless after all. You know, I'm going to go ahead and open the door. No.
Well, first off, if somebody even says that, I'm going to stop right there. You know, it's like, we could have just broke in. Guess what? Door's closed. But
well,
yeah, and I'll be calling 911 at that point.
You said that, that's when I've been grabbing my shotgun or something and saying, you know, well, if you want to break in, that's up to you, but I wouldn't advise it.
Well, if they even mention breaking in, you know, okay, that's where the offensive side comes up.
What if?
Go ahead.
You had a weapon on you, and let's say you opened the door and you invited them in, and then they started acting really weird and everything, and you shot one. Is it going to kill them? Is it going to slow them down? Or are they going to just do whatever they came in to do? So that's a whole new way to look on that, because I've never heard of anybody letting them in. That's what I'm saying. What happened if you let one in and they did something that freaked you out and you shot them or something? Is it going to hurt them? If they're like you said, if they were spirits, it's not going to hurt them.
No.
Okay, if they were demonic and they were possessing some children, yeah, I'm sure it would hurt the actual child, but it wouldn't hurt the entity inside the child. So would that child, through the force of this entity, still come after you or whatever, even though you shot them? There's a whole lot, man. There's just so many questions that you can ask about this stuff.
And some of the questions it brings up to me is, in this situation, has anybody ever actually reported it to the police? And have there been missing child reports, this and that?
That's a good question. That is a good question. In any of the cases where they had been spotted, has there been any reports of children missing? And I've never heard of any. So are they
that makes you wonder too.
Somewhere, you know, like I said, maybe out of another dimension, or maybe Johnny UFO dropped them off in the woods over there and they just walked out, you know, and came to your house.
That's where once again, I mentioned earlier, I'd like to see actual reports and dates. I mean, for example, if this happened on March 18th, 2001, and now it's March 18th, 2016, and something like that happened, is this a reaction, a revisitation from something that happened earlier at that location?
This happened at such and such location in Benner, Alabama in 2012, and you know at 6:30 p.m. on the night of Tuesday, whatever, if you had something you could dig with, you could probably find out a whole lot more stuff. Now, this is a person's personal story, that we're working off of here. And if you were in that situation, you would remember the story, you would remember what happened. But would you think afterwards to go write down the date and the time and all this stuff? She remembered.
You'd have it fairly close.
She remembered what their clothing looked like, what their hair looked like, and all that kind of, and you probably would. But would you even think after something like this, well, I better go write down the date and the time, the month, the year, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't automatically think to do that. Now, has anybody ever? Maybe, I don't know. But
if that, I mean, just for myself, if that type of situation happened,
well,
I mean, I would be making contact. Once again, call 911 or whatever, saying, "Hey, there's kids here who need help."
This, and so you would be like, "Yeah, I remember talking about this. I know what you are. Yeah, they showed up at my house on that. You write it all down. I can just see that." Because we
not necessarily write it down, but just make a phone call at least, to call the authorities and say, "Hey, there's some kids out here." Right. Asking for help. Why didn't that happen?
Well, when you're looking
that's
at
a normal thing to do.
But when you're looking at a kid with no pupils or nothing, just cold black eyes, are you going to automatically say, "Well, here's some kids that need help. I better call 911"?
Yeah, I would.
Well, most people probably wouldn't. If
I'm a former sheriff's deputy, so maybe I have a different frame of mind on that sort of thing. But
you're looking at cold, solid black eyes, one or two things is going to come into your head: it's a devil or it's a freaking alien. And that's going to be. Now, I'm not saying everybody, but that's going to be probably the majority of how people, if they encounter that, is going to look at it. And the main thing they're going to look at is, I'm not letting them suckers in my car, and I'm not letting them in my house. Now, if they got in,
well,
like
yeah.
shot one, what would happen? Would they die, or would they just keep coming on after you? Whatever their plan was.
Well, that's the whole human nature thing of fight or flight.
Yeah.
You either fight it or you run from it.
Now, on the light side, okay, let's lighten this thing up a little bit. Let's say that she opened the door, they come in, and she showed them the phone, and they went over and said, "Hey, Mom, we're over here at, would that really happen? I doubt it. But just saying, what if they did? What if they called up their mom? And where in the heck would their mom be?
Well, in that situation, I mean, if they were real kids,
Right?
then yeah, they might call mom and this and that. If they're not, they might try to call mom. Maybe mom died the same time they did.
Well, I still don't buy I still don't buy the ghost theory, because not in any of the cases were they ever shadowy or like materializing or anything. They were solid human kids with black eyes.
Well, did anybody actually touch them to know they're solid?
Well, are you going to go touch one?
Well, hell no, but
okay. Hey, come here, let me touch you. I want to see if you're real. No. But I mean, like I said, I've never read a story or seen anything on them where they were wispy, shadowy, materializing, or anything. They were always solid, human-looking children with black eyes. Okay, that was the only odd thing about them, is the black eyes. So, as I said, they could come from anywhere or nowhere.
Yeah, it's one of those things we'll have to keep wondering about. Well, if it ever happens to me
now
personally, well, I'll know a little bit more. But
you would be looking at them like, hey, I got to find out some more about this crap. You ain't going to open the door and let them in, right? But you're going to be going, man, check that out. They're real. And you're going to go here and write it all down. I can see that happening. Well, my door on May 21st, 2016 at 4:30 in the evening, and they were asking to call her mama.
I'll see. I'm one that does write everything down.
See? But now you have even more reason if you ever see something like that. Write it all down. And I want you to call me when you do. Say, hey, Raj, man, they came to my door. I got it wrote down right here, the date, time, and everything.
Interesting thoughts. I really don't know what to make of it. Gosh, who knows the answer?
You think about it. If they were demonic, if they were actually real children and they were possessed, okay, and you let them in, more than likely their object would be to gain access to your house so that they can possess you, maybe, or and as you said, not to get into the religion thing, but according to the Bible, the devil hates us and he wants to destroy us, and that's the whole 9 yards, right? So if they got access to your house and they came in, they might be option A. They're going to possess you, and you're going to be out walking around with them with black eyes, or they're going to try to kill you, destroy you.
And with the religion side of things, or with the devil, this and that, you have to invite the devil in. You have to accept the devil. If you don't, you can't come in.
Same. They got to get permission.
Yep.
So, you know, that's another star in the crown of the demonic entity thing.
Interesting thought.
This subject is just like, you know, and I've always been curious about it because, you know, in just about every case, they just happen to show up and people see them. I remember reading one story where there was a couple of them that people saw them actually walking down the street, and they went up to somebody's door. It was an elderly man's door, and he didn't let them in either, of course. But you know, other people actually saw them walking down the street. But you know, it didn't say, well, yeah, you know, I've seen them from up here at the corner of 5th and Main, and they walked all the way down. No, they just saw them walking down the street. One story I read where they tried to gain access to a car. They were standing on the side of the road on a highway in the middle of nowhere. Older boy, small boy. You know, we need a ride. And of course, whenever this car that stopped, they didn't let them in, fortunately, but they saw them like from the back, and they saw that they were children. So naturally, they stopped to see if they were okay. And from what I remember, the woman rolled the window down a little bit. She's asking if they were okay because they were, and then that's when she saw the eyes. And they were saying, you know, our parents are worried about us. Can you give us a ride? We need a ride, you know. And they didn't let them in the car. In fact, she rolls up the window, and basically it was pretty much the same scenario. You know, the older boy started getting kind of hostile. You know, the aggravation in his voice came out more, which seems to be the case in most of them. When they don't get their way with all the polite, you know, poor little me talk, they start getting more aggressive. You know, their demeanor changes.
Right.
So, you know, that's what I'm saying. Where do they come from? Because they seem to just appear there, or they appear at your door, or they appear walking down the road on a street where, if I remember right, the one I was talking about where they were seen walking down the street, there were no other kids in the neighborhood. You know, why would they?
And the question comes in is, why did they pick that neighborhood? Why did they pick you?
Right. That's what I'm saying. So it's almost like it was a predefined deal. You know, these boys show up on the side of a highway when a car, you know, comes by and stops to see if they're okay or whatever. These kids show up walking down the street and wind up going to, you know, some elderly man's door. These kids show up knocking on this woman's door at midnight. It does not ever anywhere state in any of the things that I've read where they actually came from. Where did they come from to show up where they did? Because I remember something about a story of 2 black-eyed kids outside of a store in a parking lot trying to gain access to a car or something, trying to get it to people, let them in a car or something like that. But it's always seemed like they just show up there. You know, it doesn't say that, you know, they came walking down from over yonder somewhere, you know, and came up there. You know, the car's parked out, the people in the car, and these kids just show up and walk up to the door, you know.
What would be interesting to know, too, is okay, the kids show up at this place at this time. Okay, now, has it happened at that place
before
at that time with other people? Is it a repetitive thing?
Never says anything about a repetitive ordeal. It's always just they show up in a certain area, and you know. Now, I could see why it wouldn't be if they were, especially if they were a demonic entity, as we was talking about. You know, if you show up there once and you've been seen by a few people in the parking lot, like maybe from inside the store or whatever, somebody saw you, it wouldn't do you a whole lot of good to show up another time in the same place where people that work there or something would see you again.
Yeah, but see, there you're using logic, and logic isn't involved here.
Well, we don't have any clue of what is logical here, then I guess typical logic would have to play a role. Okay, say if you worked at so-and-so's convenience store and you saw these kids out there trying to go in, get into a car, and the people didn't let them in because they looked freaky. They were getting their freak on. A week later, another car is out there. The people go out and get in their car to leave, and here comes these two same kids up to the door again. Hey, give me a ride. I remember them. That's the freaky kids that they didn't get in the car last time. Just saying, I mean.
Well, that's the repetitive thing that I'm talking about.
Exactly. That's why I wouldn't think a repetitive thing in the same areas over and over would get a little bit suspicious. Then people would start.
It would be very suspicious, but at the same time, that if we're talking a paranormal type of thing in any means, could possibly be an explanation if it happened over and over and over in the same place, because possibly something happened a long time ago in that place and they're reliving it. So just throwing out ideas. But Roger, I have my phone's just ringing off the hook here.
I don't see ghosts coming knocking on your car window going, let me in, let me in. Anyways, yeah, it's time to shut this thing down, people. We appreciated everybody in the chat room over there, Meg, Mary, and whoever else is in there. I haven't had a chance to look because I've been busy blapping here. But we appreciate all you guys. James, thanks so much, buddy.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me each Friday. I enjoy it. You're becoming a good friend, and I enjoy our conversations.
I don't know how we're going to top this one next week, but I'll think of something.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I got to go.
All right, man. We'll catch you later.
Catch you later.
Thanks a lot, everybody. You've been awesome. And we will see you guys. And I haven't got nailed down what Monday's going to be yet because I've sort of been sick and under the weather and I ain't been on top of my game. But anyway, I may do another ghostly story Monday. I haven't decided yet. And then I may just take a day off. So we'll figure that out when we get there. James, buddy, thanks again. We'll catch you next Friday. Good night, everybody.
Thank you and welcome. And thank you for joining Ghostly Stories.
Yeah. Good night, everybody.